reports, they were to send them to the standing committees with a copy to the Office of Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service. And really the purpose for these reports was to monitor, evaluate, and enhance your performance as regulators. And the analytical reports submitted by the standing committees, again, the dates that were provided, and I think we've gone through that this morning, provides an evidence base. Really here the focus of the office is service delivery, transparency, and accountability. Next slide. So I will quickly look at the compliance with instructions on form and substance. Now, Head of Public Service, you'll note, we've spoken about the submission dates. By those 2 dates, out of 129, we had 109 RAAs that have submitted, which it's 84.5%. And on the second report, we had an increase, and these again will explain how that came in. Went up to 114, which is 88.4%, an improvement there. And now in totality, we had 109 who complied with both the first and the second report. The timelines, of course, the ones who met the deadline was 100%, was 100 RAAs, 83% by 31st, and 106. And one of the things that you note there's an improvement in the second one is that the Office of Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, in conjunction with the Kenya School of Government, did some training and took the regulators through the templates. And I think from our analysis, Chief of Staff, we note a strength, 84.5, shows commitment from the leadership of these regulatory authorities and agencies. And the challenge that we had with the ones that did not comply, one of the things they indicated is that the guidelines were not clear. And I'll speak to this briefly on what they talked about. So the template had 5 sections. The template had 5 sections. The reporting template had 5 sections. The first was on your details. The accuracy in your reporting on the first section was 95%. Section 2, about 90%. We had about 15 RAAs who were not able to articulate their mandates in that section. Section 3 was on the tools, and I think the team earlier today did a very good job speaking on the tools they use to disseminate, or the tools they use to regulate. Section 4, Chief of Staff, was on the powers. What powers do you possess as a regulatory authority and agency? What authority do you have to regulate? Again, 88% completion. And hold on. And the last part, which is a very interesting part, was on the impact. Chief of Staff, we are here today. Really, the purpose of this conference is converting the mandates of each regulator that is present today to impact. Impact to the society, impact to the Kenyan public, impact to the implementing agencies that you superintend, and impact really to the people of Kenya. If you go to the next slide, this was just an analysis on cross-sector analysis. Again, 2 areas where we saw improvement was on between the first and second report, was on that section 5 on impact, 10% improvement on the second report. Again, one of these was, there was an indication of financial growth. And on the tools aspect, there was an improvement because during the second time, certain RAAs had disseminated their tool through training to the people they superintend or the public. Again, the training in September clarified the expectations of the office to the regulators. We had an interesting analysis, Chief of Staff, from the results that we got. Professional bodies were quite clear on their mandates with a 95% accuracy. We had an issue with the public-facing RAAs with 85% accuracy in totality, again limited by M&E frameworks and budget cuts. You will note that budget cuts is a thing that was mentioned by a lot of people. and the challenges was there was no clarity on the peer-reviewed tools, and on the issue of the impact, there are certain RAAs that could not quantify. They could not quantify their impact to the impact of them executing their mandates. Next slide. So on the first bit, and on the first bit, which was straightforward and with a high score, most RAAs largely have a comprehensive governance structure, and they have complied with the statutory composition of boards. Then we had a few boards which were not compliant. Chief of Staff this morning, there was an interesting comment. There's a board which has 17 members, as opposed to the recommended 9 members. And I think one of the chairpersons of the standing committees noted that. And we had a challenge that a lot of the challenges that arose from this section, Chief of Staff, was that there are delays in board appointments, and particularly in agriculture sector and industry. And these, they indicated in their reports, affected decision-making processes. The second bit, Chief of Staff and distinguished guests, on the mandate, I think this was easy, articulated quite clearly from the Acts of Parliament, legal notices and whatnot. 89% of RAAs provided clear mandate descriptions. The health sector, finance sector, and I think we saw the chairpersons of those standing committees here today, led in resolving overlaps. We have an exemplary case. Chief of Staff, if you recall, in our first conference, one of the things that you spoke about was overlaps and managing overlaps. And for the regulatory authorities and agencies to ensure they do what they need to do to clear those overlaps. And one example was IRA, and that's the Insurance Regulatory Authority, and the Advocates Complaints Commission in 2024, I think around August, signed an MOU to bolster consumer protection, enhance transparency in the process of settlement of accident claims. There was an issue around there, and the terms of the MOU eliminated the overlaps that existed. Now, the challenge, and this is a challenge that, if you understand the campaign, should not be a challenge. Now, those who did not submit their reports, most of them indicated that they are not regulators. And they indicated we are not regulators because we are not classified or categorized as such by SCAC. Now, you will note that SCAC's categorization, and it does so for purposes of different things from salary and whatnot, has about 78 regulatory authorities and agencies. When the Chief of Staff commissioned this campaign, part of what the team did was go through each and every act that establishes an entity and sieve out those who have in any way, form or shape mandates that either make them set norms and standards, regulate, supervise, oversight certain things, and there are many others. The list from the Chief of Staff's office is 129, and this extends beyond state corporations. It includes offices like Commissioner for Cooperatives, Commissioner for Sports, Commissioner for Labor, which ideally are not state corporations, so they cannot be categorized as regulators. But if you look at their mandate, they have a wide array of activities that make them regulate those sectors, from cooperatives to sports to labor and so on. So the campaign really did not focus on only those who are categorized by SCAC as regulators, but for every public entity that sets norms and standards and superintends either an implementing agency or members of the public to ensure that they adhere to those standards. Again, an interesting development or an interesting observation from the reports that you submitted to the Office of Head of Public Service. There were several RAAs who operationalized new regulations. Top of my head, KCA is one of them, which of course led to improved compliance. Then they also remain on agricultural RAAs and county governments. That remained a problem. Again, the issue of clarity of mandate is important, and those lingering overlaps should be one of the things that we address through this conference. Next slide. On the use of tools, again, many examples to give. They employ diverse tools such as e-portals, digital licensing systems. 85% of the RAAs documented use of tools, and then 19 lacked formalized peer-reviewed instruments. It's interesting because one of the chairpersons of a standing committee did indicate that in their state department, all the regulators have these tools apart from two, but those two are in the development stage. Again, the issue of budget constraints below 50, especially for the smaller RAAs of below 50 million. Again, that was a challenge. And then the trainings, only 40 RAAs indicated they had conducted trainings to their entities. All right, next slide. So powers and authority to regulate. This was the section that required the powers that you have under your enabling legislation or statute to regulate. That was, we had a comprehensive, 88% reported quantifiable deployment of powers. Now the 15 gave narratives, which was not what was expected. Again, the challenges there is inconsistent numerical reporting. There was a challenge, an interesting challenge on intimidation and safety threats. Regulators indicating we want to regulate, we want to enforce, but when we send our people out, there are issues. Our people are threatened, our people are, there are safety risks. Again, the safety risks highlighted the need for protective measures, and if you look at the program set out for the 3 days, some of these things are things we'll speak about. Again, next slide. Okay, this was an interesting slide, and this is what your office, Chief of Staff and Public Service, was looking for, the impact. And when we trained the regulators, the impact needed to be something that can be quantified. We have increased access to a certain service by X%, or we have grown a sector by this percent. So it has to be something that can be quantified. You cannot, as a regulator, indicate that you have increased happiness of people, because now we can't measure happiness. You can't, as a regulator, say we made people more happy. It's not quantifiable. So we had that challenge, though it was a smaller group. And 25 of the RAAs did not have any structured M&Es systems, so they could not provide data. And then again, the challenge of we are not able to be impactful because there's public resistance, we have lawsuits that are weighing us down. Some of those things came out earlier. And then the financial RAAs showed increased revenue outputs. Again, deficits in structured engagements and monitoring frameworks. Chief of Staff, I must indicate, this was the one thing that came across so strongly from the reports we received. And what the regulators are indicating is that we are capable of performing optimally. But where our powers end, another regulator has to take over. All right? So they're indicating we are able to, but we can only do so much because another regulator has to come in, and then another regulator, then another entity, for instance, like the inspector of police. So, and one of the recommendations that was standard throughout was that one of the things that they would want to get out of this conference is a standard or a structured engagement framework where the regulators can hold each other's hands to complete an entire process. And we'll be speaking to that again briefly. So those are the first bits and a summary of what we picked from the reports that we received. On the issue of stakeholder engagement and public perceptions, I'll be quick on this one. We have seen many RAAs adopt diverse channels, toll-free numbers. We saw an increase in social media updates. The visibility is so obvious, unlike what was there before during our last conference. Again, on one of the challenges that comes out and why some RAAs are saying they're not visible, they are not able to do their outreach is budget and staff, staff compliments. And I think we had that discussed in the morning. And one of the chairpersons, the one from State Department for Interior, indicated that they have found ways of performing optimally, even with a small staff establishment. And the recommendations that were given here is that there needs to be a development of a national engagement guidelines. How do these RAAs use a framework to engage all the people that they superintend, and scaling digital platforms? There was so much reference to ICTA, that ICTA should then have a way of interlinking the regulators so that they are able to use technology, leverage on technology to reach out to all the implementing agencies and the public. All right, so next slide. So there were certain suggestions that cut across so many of the regulators from these reports that we received. The first was on strengthening governance and capacity, and this was almost like a replica, that there is need for a system. In fact, they made reference to 4 teams. Similar to that for board appointments, and that RAAs should be required, or a directive to the RAAs to require them to submit board vacancy notices to your office before the expiry, 3 months before expiry of their tenure. Again, there was a recommendation, and I hope this is something that we are able to come out of from this conference. Developing a unified M&E framework with KPIs. These lacked in most of your reports. Training staff, and again, this was linked to budgetary constraints, and implementing a real-time dashboard, impact dashboard to boost transparency. There needs to be a dashboard that the regulators can also use for them to see what the other regulators are achieving. Next slide. On improving stakeholder engagements, I think we've spoken about the citizen feedback portals. There's a standing committee that was key on citizen feedback portals and communication layers on units. Here, there was reference to NGAO, and that there needs to, again, to be a framework where these regulators are able to efficiently engage NGAO to reach out to the members of the public. The issues of public resistance and safety risks, again, whistleblowing protection programs to be enhanced, and public awareness campaigns. Again, this was tied to funds. On scaling of technological adoption, and maybe you can almost guess which standing committee talked about AI-driven compliance systems, which should be implemented by all, and pilot blockchain technologies. This was particularly for those RAAs that license and to enhance public trust. Next slide. So again, this is linked. These were 3 key things that were clear: the digital transformation overhaul, zero tolerance to enforcement policy, and mandatory enforcement audits. Next slide. Okay. So overall conclusions from analysis, Chief of Staff in our public service, we note it is an effective way of measuring performance. We always say that which is not measured doesn't get done. And the RAAs performance was significant. There was significant improvement across board for all RAAs. And I'll highlight 5 unique challenges. The lack of a coordination framework with other regulators. That was consistent in most of your reports. Then public resistance, I think we've spoken about that, the safety threats. There was those who are very clear that they do not have support from the National Police Service to enhance their enforcement. And then the issue of staffing shortages, we spoke about that, and also the funding gaps. Next slide. These are best practices. I will not speak to this because chairpersons of standing committees were present and they spoke to this. Next slide. And some of the conclusions we make, Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, with the 85% compliance rate, it signals strong progress in the oversight and in public service delivery. There's an increased use of technology and stakeholder engagement. Again, these are aligns with a better agenda. We've noted the key challenges that were highlighted: capacity and financial constraints, lack of a structured engagement framework, public resistance and safety risks. The proposed measures, including digital transformation, the zero tolerance enforcement, decentralized operation hubs, PPPs where necessary, and mandatory audits, and specific, of course, recommendation on governance, the M&E frameworks, and the technological adoption, providing solutions to issues that were deemed. So we close with a quote: "What gets measured gets managed." And I think, Head of Public Service, in the interest of time, I will stop there. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex, for being obedient and keeping time. He's taken exactly 30 minutes that we had allocated him. That addresses the issue of the biannual report, and it was quite comprehensive. It's going to be shared online so that you can go into more depth when you go back to your offices. Chief guest, now we want to go to the discussants. We have a panel of the principal secretaries who are going to talk to those issues. Collins Kipoma is going to lead us in this. We are allocating them 30 minutes only. Yeah? 30 minutes only, Collins. So you will keep time. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Guest.
Thank you very much. The hopes. Chief Guest, the Chief of Staff and the Head of Public Service, our Deputy Head of Public Service, all the PSS present, the Principal Administrative Secretary EOP, Chairpersons, CEOs, Corporation Secretaries, Head of Internal Audit, and Chairpersons of Independent Officers. Good afternoon. Good afternoon once again. My singular duty this afternoon is to call the discussants, just to moderate and get their reflections, perspectives, and postulations where necessary as regards to the presentations my colleague has just given and the ones that were given in the morning on the report and feedback from the regulatory agencies. So please allow me to welcome to the stage PSS, CEOs, and senior ranks of the executive to give their reflections. And to start us off would be Dr. P.S. Raymond Omolo, the PS State Department for Interior. Please join us on stage. Followed by Dr. Beatrice Inyangala, the PS Higher Education. Equally followed by Dr. Esther Moria, PS State Department for Tibet. Karibu sana. Then the next category are the DGs and CEO, led by Mr. Emil Nguza Arao, the CEO of the DG of Kenya Civil Aviation. Karibu sana. Then we also have Dr. Grace Kamau, the CEO Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. Then for the senior ranks of the executive, we have Dr. Leah Kasera, who's the head of Public Policy and President's Priority Initiatives, domiciled at the Office of the Chief of Staff and the Head of Public Service. We equally have Dr. Sylvester Kasuku, who's the advisor and head of governance at the Office of the Chief of Staff and the Head of Public Service. Clearly, as you can see, we have a full pack of doctors. Actually, I think except for one person, everyone here is a doctor. I hope they can be able to keep within the 5 minutes where we've gotten directions for all of you, because we understand doctors can educate us to no end. So within 5 minutes, we can get their reflections. But as they catch a breath, I just wanted to address one particular issue that came up clearly in the discussion in the morning as regards to the issue of delayed appointments in our respective boards, because it has been a very pertinent issue that came up. It's important to point out that in the different enabling provisions of law, board members are appointed either by the president, the cabinet secretary, and the instance where this board appointment are statutory appointments, where the different entities are mandated to put institutional representatives depending on the particular enabling provision of that particular act. So these laws provide that these people are to be nominated by them, and in other instances, these processes are supposed to be done competitively. At the moment, we have about 100 vacancies in these state corporations where we are supposed to get those representatives, and the Chief of Staff and the Head of Public Service, through different correspondences, has written to all of you asking for those vacancies to be filled. And in a lot of instances, and why it is still an issue, is that we are yet to receive these correspondences in terms of who are the institutional rep, or they've not asked for these correspondences to be given. So it is an issue that touches even on ourselves as we put the question. I equally forgot to welcome yet another doctor, Dr. Seth Wekesa. Karibu, Dr. Seth. Karibu sana. Yeah, there's a seat here close to me for you as another doctor to give your reflections about the presentations done. And equally, I forgot to recognize the Deputy Governor of Singishu County, and Karibu sana. So I'll be the timekeeper. Please, let's stick to the 5 minutes that was indicated, and we'll start with you, Dr. Seth, in 5 minutes. Karibu sana. 5 minutes. Emphasis.
Our chief guest, distinguished guests, and the participants, good afternoon. I wasn't expecting to be the first one to go on this one, but I think I'm ready to share my reflection right away. So thank you, Alex, for the presentation, and thank you for sharing the report with us. I note that the regulatory authorities have shown a lot of improvement in terms of their performance, despite facing a number of challenges as they undertake their role to enhance, service delivery and also contribute to the economy. I want to share 3 issues from the presentation. So the first one is the question of impact and how to quantify impact, and the way some of the regulators are struggling to be able to quantify the impact of their regulatory role on society and community, so that there is improvement in service delivery. So what I want to share is that there are quite a number of ways in which you can be able to quantify your impact when you're trying to regulate a sector. One of them is to be able to undertake a cost-benefit analysis. As a regulator, you should be able to look at what is the cost of regulating a sector, and what benefits are you looking at to the society. And there are tools that can help you to do this, so that you're able to measure, even as you show performance improvement in your space as a regulator, you're able to tell that we spend X amount of money to regulate this sector, and the outcome on what we've done is this and that. This goes beyond just looking at how many, for example, site visits you've done as NTSA, if you have to use NTSA, but trying to see how those site visits have tried to reduce the number of deaths on the road. So there are a number of tools that can be done to do that. The other reflection on the same point is where you introduce a new intervention. And I remember Alex talking about one of the regulators who introduced new regulation recently. It's always good to look at your status before you introduce the new regulations, and then also measure your outcome after you introduce the new intervention, to be able to tell whether the new intervention has had any impact on the issue you wanted to address as a regulator. So that by the time you introduce the intervention, you already know where you are at and what you want to achieve with the new intervention. Then lastly on that is the role of stakeholder engagement. I think the role of stakeholder engagement should go beyond visibility it's good for the public to know you, what you're doing as a regulator, what is your role, your powers and all that. But also you can use stakeholder engagement to collect feedback that helps you to assess the impact that you have on the ground. Because these are the people you are targeting to receive the feedback or to receive your services as a regulator. So when you engage them, you're doing that to let them know you and what you do, but also you want them to give you feedback about what they feel about your service, and that could be a tool that helps you also to measure impact at the end of the process. The second comment I have is on culture, compliance culture. One of the things that can make regulators work a bit easier is where you also instill a compliance culture within the regulated entities. So for example, if you regulate banks, you are the CBK, how do you ensure that banks within their systems, they're fully compliant? Because that makes your work easier as a regulator, once you instill that particular process. The last level culture is also, how do you behave as a regulator? Are you leading by example? If you promise the public that you have 10 days to resolve a dispute that comes before you as a regulator, but you take 1 year to do that, are you able to show the public that you can trust us to respect our own timelines internally, and then also ensure the entities you are regulating also observe certain things? So the regulators need also to internally ensure that they manage their internal processes in a way that they comply with that to promote credibility, public trust, and confidence. Then lastly is on litigation. It came up during the morning discussion, and how litigation has become a challenge to regulation and the delay that it brings to regulatory journey. I think one of the ways regulators need to think about litigation is, one is to map out the sources of these disputes and focus mostly on the sources that are coming from your regulatory departments, the core departments. But the other litigation that may come from HR processes and also procurement, those are mostly support departments, and you can manage that. But where the litigation is coming from the core department of your regulatory responsibility, then you have to map out those sources and try to close those loopholes so that you minimize exposure to litigation. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping time. The next presenter is Dr. Leah Kasera. Karibu sana.
Our chief guest, Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, Deputy Hops, past Principal Secretaries, DGs, CEOs. I'll run through this very quickly. It's a 5-minute presentation, and the theme of this presentation is fit for purpose. Next. Now, the background to this is that we have regulators that are operating in very difficult circumstances, conflicting interests in the economy, society, and these are related to trade, climate, technological developments. I give the example of trade also because we've been in a season of signing trade agreements, whether bilateral or global, still under the WTO, but also closer home, we have the Continental Free Trade Area. And so regulators operating in an increasingly protectionist environment. We have the example more recently of the America First policy. Businesses and investments also suffering from lack of certainty and predictability from regulators and regulations. This is information that has frequently reached us. And also the need for regulators to adapt and attune to new industries. Content creation, Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, he chaired a meeting this morning on gaming. And these are industries that are coming up and that regulators have to be proactive and attune with a view to supporting those sectors. But also increasingly challenges posed by new technologies, AI, crypto assets, etc. And we had an example earlier this morning about regulators also operating independently at an operational level, understanding their independence, yet on the flip side, the need to deliver through a collaborative effort. There's also working with complex and duplicative regulations, stifling progress and innovation, creating a situation where there's uneven enforcement, impeding public service delivery, but also placing burdens on businesses and investments. I talked about trade and investments earlier. And we have the example, for example, of Can Invest. We have special economic zones, but also we have Huduma centers that then are supposed to create an environment of ease of business. So one asks themselves, how ready are these, regulators for investments and trade that is being signed out with other countries? Next. And so there are a number of reflections, perhaps, that the regulators should think of. One is on regulatory policies and strategies. Is there a need for harmonization? On regulatory agencies, the role, scope, and influence of the supranational nature of these regulatory policies. Looking at policy tools, consultation, communication mechanisms as a way to improve transparency with users of regulations, and then the need to introduce perhaps a regulatory impact analysis at various levels of government. And so because we are in the process of implementing better, I wanted to just give an example of two industries, one that is rarely talked about and another one that is mostly talked about. One is on creative industries. I wanted to give an example of what's happening currently in the film subsector. The background in that is that the film subsector has the potential to amplify Kenyan stories locally and globally. The impact here would be reclaiming culture and national narratives and also empowering local services and others. The agencies involved here are Kenya Film Commission, Kenya Film Classification Board, and Department of Film Services. Next. Now, the information that's reaching us is that there is a situation of outdated regulations. The current one currently being implemented is the Films and Stage Plays Act, Cap 222, and the question is it suitable for this digital age? Next. And then the value proposition that the licensing should offer. As we understand it, licensing is designed as a regulatory tool or control for development, as opposed to one that then, is extractive and disincentivizes participation. And so, is there a need for a clear value proposition for licensing fees to allow entry for emerging talent? So these are some of the reflections next that these bodies should be occupied with. Problem 3, lack of multi-agency coordination at a policy development level. So those are the actors that need to work in a coordinated approach. Is there a need for a master plan for the creative industry development? SAGAs are currently operating in silos. Is that why there's continuous incoherence in policy, undermining our ability to develop and implement strategies? Next. Now, this is the other sector that I wanted to talk about also because this is one sector that has increasingly shown promise and a better, but here also we still have challenges with outdated regulations and the National Seed Policy, Agricultural Produce Export Act 319, Anti-Counterfeit Act number 13, Crops Act, and generally disjointed standards and regulations touching on different nodes of the value chains. Next. Now, there's still, again, the issue of cross-cutting regulations that require multi-agency approach. There's the strategy, agriculture strategy 2019-2029 that needs to be aligned with counties. There's the Seed and Plant Varieties Act. And then there's also the general issue of impact, visibility, and enforcement. Next. And so there's further reflection and work for standing committees. One participant talked about targeted support. And here is where now we ask, are we fit for purpose as a regulatory agency, as those that are developing regulation? Are we aligned to better? Are we aligned to Vision 2030? And are we aligned to SDGs? And then there's also a proposal of sharing best practices. We had regulatory bodies under Ministry of Health, that gave a presentation on how well they've been able to work together and continuously improve their services. Is there work that needs to be done on outdated regulation, reviewing of regulations, the context of competition, global dynamics? Are we developing regulation for now and the future, or are we still working with a regulation that is outdated? And then the issue of alignment, coordination, collegiality among RAAs for impact, visibility, and enforcement. And perhaps when we come back in 2026, we should come back with numbers of how many jobs have been generated, because we are leading regulation or regulatory authorities that are fit for purpose. How many jobs have been created? How many corruption cases have we been able to capture? And what is it? What has the clear impact in terms of numbers been because of being proactive and because of working with the regulation that's fit for purpose? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's put our hands together for Dr. Kasera. And all these presentations are available on Eventify, together with all the ones that were done in the morning. So the next presenter is Dr. Grace Kamau, who is the Chief Executive Officer in the Institute of the Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. Karibu sana Daktari.
Thank you so much. To the chief guest, the Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, the Deputy Head of Public Service, all dignitaries, allow me to ride on all the protocols that have been observed. Good afternoon. Yeah, so I don't know whether you will be able to project my presentation, but I wanted to speak to 3 issues at the interest of time on what has been observed as some of the ways that we can improve. And I want to specifically speak to the issue of budgetary allocation. I want to speak to overlaps and how we can continuously manage the overlaps. I think that is a matter that we have been speaking to from morning. Training and capacity building and collaboration. And because I come from the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, allow me to give a more practical example on how we have handled some of those, because from the morning discussions, a lot of challenges that have been faced in various RAAs is actually cross-cutting, and they are pretty much similar. First of all, the report is really comprehensive. I think listening to that, you can't wait to have the full report uploaded so that we can deep dive into it. But I specifically wanted to talk about the issue of mandate. And many of the RAAs that were not able to identify their mandate, and that can only mean there could be a disconnect between the exact what they are required to do and the legal framework that established them. And that is exactly where we found ourselves at the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, where we were expected to regulate the accountants in Kenya, but for the longest time, the legal framework that established the institute were actually only regulating or giving more details on how we regulate the practitioners, those who provide the audit assurance, but left the bulk or the majority of the members who actually are not practitioners. And in that, you can go to the next slide, just looks at the mandate of the institute. Just to look at the mandate is to promote the standards of professional competence and practice amongst its members. And that is what I was talking about. I just want to talk to that besides the rest of the mandate of the Institute, including the research, the promotion of international recognition, and also advice to both the board and the CS in charge of National Treasury. And what we found, when we found that gap in terms of the regulatory framework that was there, then we engaged immediately into a process of reviewing the Accountants Act, which is a process, you can go to the next slide, which is the process that is currently undergoing the last review of what we call public participation. And in this review of the Accountants Act, we have brought in the entire membership. As I said previously, the Act was only looking at those who are practicing members, which constitutes about 10% of the entire membership. We have over 35,000 members, and only about 3,000 members are under what we call the practicing. And therefore, this review is expected to look at how we can enhance first of all, make sure that every member is brought to the purview, and also bringing in stiffer penalties for those who practice who are not accountants, or those who practice and they don't have current licenses. You can go to the next slide. That is what I've just talked about. The next slide. So we can go to the next one. So we are currently going through the last phase of implementation of the stakeholder engagement of the review, and immediately after that you'll be able to see that. How else have we come in to support our members in terms of being able to be effective regulators? We have actively participating in the process of the accrual accounting. We all know that currently we are undergoing the accrual, the IPSAS accrual implementation framework, and we are taking part in that, in making sure that we actually support our members by making sure that we capacity build them and we bring them to the place where they can be able to take up that responsibility that is brought to them. Let's go to the next one. Maybe you can skip the next one. I can see the moderator is already here. And I think I don't want to even go into the benefits of accrual. But let me just talk to two benefits of accrual. That we'll be able to have a full financial statements that includes the assets and liabilities fully. And I know the menace of pending bills will be sorted out when we fully implement the accrual accounting. Let's go to the next slide at the interest of time. The other items, I think these are some of the innovations we have brought in just to enhance accountability. And we have come up with an ISPAC accountability index. And this is just an index that is expected to highlight how our accountability increasing in terms of public financial management. So we have come up with an accountability index that will look at how prudently the public resources are being implemented. And we have looked at 7 pillars. You can go to the next one that looks at the pillars that we are looking at. We have looked at 7 pillars that we can immediately start implementing in the public space, both in the county government and in the national government, that looks at issues around budget reliability. We are looking at transparency of public finance, management and of assets and liabilities, which will also be addressed by the accrual accounting, policy-based fiscal strategy budgeting. We have looking at predictability of the budget execution, accounting and reporting, and how we handle the external auditing framework. And in this, we'll be able to come up with a policy of where we are and how we can increase. Allow me to speak to the last one. You can go to the next slide to talk about, I think we have also come up with another innovation that we are about to launch, which is called unique document identification number. And this will become very, very relevant to all of you seated here today, and will really move our country to the next level. Today, apart from the payroll-related activities, we do public, what we call the tender of all the other services. And one of the requirements is the financial statements that supports those who are tendering or bidding for the works. And what we are coming up with, and this is out of what we have received from a lot of you, is that when you receive a set of financial statements, you can't tell whether those statements are actually audited by an authentic auditor or they're actually just stamped. And what we are coming up with is a unique document identification number that every auditor who audits a set of financial statements will be able to put it. And this will be available to the general public to be able to scan, and you can be able to confirm the authenticity of those financial statements, whether they are really audited by an authentic auditor. And you'll be able to actually even confirm the status of the auditor in terms of whether they are in good standing, whether they have properly been licensed to carry out the work, and they have the requisite skills and competencies to be able to do that. So that is one of the upcoming innovations that will help us in that space. Finally, let me talk about issue of use of digital. And we are looking at how we have already really implemented a lot of digital framework that all our activities, including how you apply for the licenses, how the approval process, and how we confirm, including even capacity building of our members, where they can be able to get in the CPD, the requisite requirements and skills and competencies within the framework of within our online platforms. So thank you so much. Let me leave it at that at the interest of time, but a lot of innovations that can be encompassed, and many of you can be able to borrow to be able to implement and become better regulators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Makofi. The next presenter is Dr. Esther Moria, the PS TVET. And Chief Guest, you will forgive me once the presenters take more than 5 minutes. It's not an easy job to remind doctors when I'm not one myself, but I promise to be one by the next conference so that I can tell them as compatriots. Karibu sana daktari.
Hopes and the rest of the protocols observed, I'll be a very good doctor. I want to speak into only 3 issues: 1, appointments; 2, measurement; and 3, execution, in a very brief way. Number 1, somebody has said here that we have about 100 vacancies in boards waiting to be taken up. From where I come, I would even want to scale that up to another level. What is causing all this delayed, and therefore meaning that nothing much is getting done? All what needs to be done is therefore not getting done. The delays, hopes in these appointments is a big thing, and this comes from ourselves because we do not start early enough. 2, our regulators also sometimes take too long. For me, for my case, Tiveta, who I think is here, takes too long to finish up with the appointments. And then those that have to go to Hope's office, again, they take forever there. So this is a whole chain of delays. That is a fact, and he is here, so I am not backbiting him. So we are saying that we need to work as we should. And this goes to my next point: execution. Hopes and all of us, we can make rules, we can make laws, we can continue doing all these things year in, year out. But as long as we are not committed to the execution of our laws and regulations as we put them up, then, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to cause delays in where this country should be going to continuously, because we are just writing things and putting them in our desk. One of the things I have told the persons that I'm working with, and some of them are here, is that Kenya is good at writing even very good policies. Then other countries can pick them and go and execute them, because we are not executors. Can we, ladies and gentlemen, put our best foot forward, not only in executing the rules and regulations that we are very good at making, and but also the policies that we are coming up with, and that will help us go to where we want to go. Finally, measurement. Again, for me and Dr. Inyangala here, we have no problem measuring, because if it is the number of students we have trained, it is there to be seen. If it is those who have failed and those who have passed, it is there to be seen. So for us, measurement becomes easy. Ladies and gentlemen, let us learn to be proactive in measuring what we are doing if we want to be serious. And that way, we will not be wasting resources and time for each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Next, PS Dr. Omolo, to make our final set of presentations. Then I'll ask the discussants to exit the stage to allow the head of public service to give his keynote speech. Then we get back to the discussion. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Collins, Head of Public Service, and all colleagues. Good afternoon. Good afternoon once again. So Alex has shared with us an interesting report, which actually focused largely on the extent of the implementation of previous recommendations, how effective the service delivery is, as well as enforcement, what we need to do on governance, and also management of the resources. I do not want to belabor or repeat what my colleagues have spoken to, but maybe just to highlight 4 or 5 issues as what I see as part of the key points from the report or the recommendations. One of the issues, and we spoke about it in the morning, is around governance. And we picked this as a major challenge in terms of whether the boards are properly constituted or not. But then there was something that came up in the morning, which I'm sure is also part of the report, is the intersection between the role of the board of governors against management, the board of directors vis-a-vis the management. Where do we draw the line? And in most cases, particularly the CEOs have had to deal with the chairs of boards and directors who are quite overbearing. In certain cases, of course, the boards also accuse management of not being very cooperative. I think we still need to do quite a bit in that space. The other issue is around the resources. We will never have enough resources. But then how do we become innovative in terms of how to generate on-source revenue, the appropriations in aid, and also to utilize the available resources in a much cost-effective way. If you are a regulator and you are probably in the same space, how do you leverage on the resources that exist in another agency or in another department or in another ministry, so that we are not constantly looking to recruit more staff for purposes of delivering on our responsibilities. Then the issue of overlap, what the counties are responsible for vis-a-vis what the national government is, and then the different regulators who are probably having cross-cutting responsibilities. And I would give a very good example of an experience that we are currently dealing with. Kenya Bureau of Standards, Anti-Counterfeit Authority, and then you also have the consumer protection agencies, where you find some entities have given themselves the responsibility that is either meant for the Anti-Counterfeit Authority or Kenya Bureau of Standards. Interestingly, they are backed by our laws. You find they've even managed to sneak and have gazette notices that gives them some of these powers. So these are areas that we really need to continue working together. And I've given this as an example because it's a space that we have currently reigned in. Now, technology. We have digitized almost all the government services. The report from the e-Citizen Directorate is that we have over 22,000 government services that have been digitized. I think they have another 2,400 that are yet to be digitized. I'm hoping that none of us in this conference has not fully complied with this directive from the Office of the Head of Public Service. Let it be people outside this conference. Because failure to do that, it means that we are not being as efficient as is expected, and then we still have services that are being given in an opaque manner. Then maybe as I wind up is the issue around public participation. My state department has a central role in facilitating public participation. When you have new regulations that you want to have the public engage in, that you want to review before you take them to Parliament, or even amendments to laws, I'd want to bring it to your attention that let's work with a team within the State Department for
internal security and national administration, because we have the infrastructure, we have the experience, and we'll be able to provide you with the support. You don't need to spend too much resources to be able to achieve that. Now, final takeaway. What is the linkage with everything that we are doing as regulatory authorities and agencies with the better priorities? How is what you are doing as a regulator linked to the 5 key priorities? What we are doing on universal healthcare, what we are doing on medium and small micro enterprises, what we are doing on housing, what we are doing in the ICT space, and also in agriculture as part of addressing the challenge on food security. Thank you. I want to stop there. I know we still have more time. We'll be able to engage. But in a special way, let me thank the head of public service, because this is a very good initiative that gives us an opportunity to first know what we are supposed to be doing as regulators, but also to interact with fellow regulators so that we see how best we can synergize the capacities that exist within the different agencies. Thank you.
Amakofi, thank you very much, Pierce. Karibu Daktari, she's seeking for only a minute. Then we welcome the Deputy Head of Public Service.
Sure. Head of Public Service and all protocols observed. You know that the team that's here knows that CBC compliant. So 1 minute is 1 minute. I want to leave you with 2 thought-provoking questions for your assignment this evening. So the first one is, what is your motivation behind compliance? Is it just to obey the law? Is it to look good, to avoid sanctions? Think about this and let those numbers make meaning in terms of the impact on the people. And the second and last question is, yes, we have been told we are doing a good job at 85% and we can do better. But can we accomplish the same using less resources? Value for money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The essence of a panel is to respect time. When you don't respect time, it means that you're being selfish and you're disadvantaging your other panelists. And I think that's what has happened, and we have lost a few minutes, and we apologize for those who have not been able to give their thoughts. Maybe in the course of the other remaining 2 days, we'll give them time to do so. Because we are pressed for time, our chief guest has to go back to Nairobi because there's another serious engagement tomorrow. We want to stop there for today's program. And before I invite the chief guest, I want to invite the Deputy Governor of Uasin Gishu, Honorable Evans Kapkea, to come and just greet us, say one word, and then we can invite the chief guest. Thank you.
The Head of Public Service, we are happy that the national government is really collaborating with us as Uasin Gishu County, and the message from His Excellency Governor is that we continue collaborating so that you support us in service delivery, especially on the agricultural sector and the trade practices that we have in Uasin Gishu County. This is the city, and as the city, we really depend on the national government in ensuring that we make it the real city in the Republic of Kenya. Because of the interest of time, my name is Evans Kapkea. I'm the Deputy Governor of Uasin Gishu County, and once again, I say welcome to Uasin Gishu County. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.
Thank you, Deputy Governor. Now, officially, we've been welcomed here by the university itself. The county commissioner was here early in the morning, and now we have seen the county government. Now, I think we have the key to the city. We can do what we want as long as we keep the law. Sir, I want to report that we have sat here since morning, and we have seen very high levels of discipline among the participants in this room. They have been very attentive, very participatory, and we have not seen them walk around. They have been, mujipigia makofi. And they have been very attentive, and I hope they will keep that discipline up to the end of the workshop, which is on Wednesday, just before lunch. With those few remarks, I want to take this opportunity to invite the head of the Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, Bwana Felix Koskei, to address us. We can stand and give him a clap. Thank you. Karibu sana.
Let us have our seats. All principals. So I have to hold like this. All principal secretaries present, all chairpersons of boards of regulatory authorities and agencies, all independent board members of boards of regulatory authorities and agencies present, all chief executive officers present, all chairpersons of regulatory authorities and agencies standing committee present, all corporation secretaries, all heads of internal audit, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is both my solemn duty and profound privilege to welcome you to the second annual Regulatory Authorities and Agencies Conference. We convene under the stirring theme, the urgent fortification, the responsiveness by regulators to the campaign on the revitalization and re-energization of regulatory authorities and agencies. Over the next 3 days, here in the City of Champions, nestled within Kenya's verdant agricultural heartland, we shall recommit ourselves to the renewed path of regulatory excellence, one that is more efficient, more transparent, and above all, unwaveringly citizen-centered. When this administration assumed office, it quickly became apparent that the ambitions set out in our manifesto were being significantly hindered by an underperforming public service, weighed down by weak governance structure, particularly in the audit and regulatory sectors. My office observed that many regulatory bodies mandated to set norms, enforce standards, and foster enabling environments for progress had become functionally ineffective. This not only compromised performance, but also undermined the administration's legitimacy and credibility. A painful yet necessary diagnosis followed. Kenya's regulatory landscape was marred by fragmentation, overlapping mandates, and widespread capacity deficits, symptoms that diminish investor confidence, corrode public trust, and obstruct our collective developmental goals. These challenges manifested through opaque licensing regimes, corruption, protracted approval processes, inconsistent enforcement, among others, all of which bred inefficiency and dissatisfaction among stakeholders. In response to this persistent inertia, my office championed a targeted intervention designed to revitalize and re-energize regulatory authorities and agencies. Central to this intervention was the establishment of a comprehensive reform program with standing committees of regulatory authorities and agencies strategically positioned as the principal drivers of reform and oversight across the regulatory ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, my office issued a directive mandating regulatory authorities and agencies to submit biannual reports and convene annually to review developments within the regulatory space. This directive was designed to sustain the momentum of reform and to ensure that regulatory authorities and agencies remain both revitalized and re-energized in their mandates. Allow me to reflect on the inaugural RAAs conference held on 11 to 12 April 2024 at the Kenya School of Government in Mombasa. On that occasion, this administration articulated unequivocally the high standards of expectations it places upon every regulatory authority and agency. You are impelled to, number one, refocus on substantive deliverables, discarding peripheral activities that dilute our core mission. Secondly, you are impelled to propose legislative and regulatory amendments where statutory lacuna hindered or hinder progress. Third was to synergize interagency efforts to eradicate duplication and cultivate unified oversight. The fourth was prioritize preventative strategies as the foremost defense against systemic failures. It was also for you to embed rigorous anti-corruption safeguards to preserve the integrity of public institutions and also to capacitate technical compliance officers to foster a cadre of consummate professionals. You are also to calibrate organizational structures to align with evolving mandates. You are also to deploy scarce resources with strategic precision and thereby harnessing cutting-edge technologies to amplify efficiency, accessibility, and accountability. 1 year down the line, I wish to commend the many regulatory authorities and agencies that have risen to the occasion and responded to the call. I think you need to clap for yourselves. I acknowledge the remarkable strides already made. Most of you have realigned internal processes, dismantled long-standing bureaucratic bottlenecks, and delivered tangible results. From streamlined permitting procedures across multiple counties to the expedited approval processes. Your commitment is already bearing fruit. We are witnessing reduced turnaround times, enhanced stakeholder confidence, and the emergence of a more dynamic and inclusive business environment for all Kenyans. This kind of proactive stewardship embodies the very ethos we continue to champion, not just regulating, but also innovating, collaborating, and placing the public interest at the core of every regulatory mandate. And I want to add and say that I really want to commend Commission of University Education. I don't know whether, the way they moved, I think it was caused not only to disrupt an illegal graduation ceremony from some conmen, but also arrested them and took them to court. Congratulations. That is the regulator that we want. Another one is NCA. They have done a good job. They always move very fast and ensure that whatever is happening in the sector is nipped in the bud. I want, among others, there are so many that we are fascinated and very happy to watch you working very hard, that are shown that if you really focus, instill some confidence, you will do exactly what you are mandated to do. However, we are not yet there yet. A number of regulators among us remain anchored in outdated practices and appear committed to preserving the status quo. While your mandates are well defined, the inertia and reluctance to fully embrace reform continue to undermine the delivery of premium services to the Kenyan people. We want to ask those in that category to just wake up and work. The law is on your side. The administration is on your side. Don't live in the past. And please, shake off the outdated practices and be committed to the dynamism of the sectors that you're oversighting. Don't live in the past. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be clear. The government remains unwavering in its commitment to provide world-class public services. Our vision is unambiguous. Regulators must serve as architects of opportunity, guardians of equity, and catalysts for inclusive, sustainable growth. It is precisely within this context that the second RAAs conference could not have come at a more opportune time. For those in need of renewed clarity, reinforcement, or capacity building, the space is here to recommit, to reform, and to reimagine the future. Over the next 3 days, we will dissect the biannual reports of October 2024 and March 2025, engage in in-depth analysis of leadership alignment and radical regulatory powers, and also showcase trailblazing innovations and probe the cross-cutting support strategies of complementary institutions. I expect nothing less than candid reflection, robust debate, and the crystallization of actionable best practices. Let us seize this moment to calibrate our collective compass, to forge enduring partnerships, and to march forward with rigor, with renewed rigor. I challenge each one of you to engage with boldness, to think expansively, and to depart this forum laden with commitment that will translate regulatory ambitions into palpable service delivery outcomes for all Kenyans. I want to add, and first of all, to thank you very much for coming in this big number. And as I was reflecting also, though I just walked into this conference about 1.5 hours ago, I was thinking and wondering whether from last year to this year, have we found our way and try to reflect whether we know our strategic role and importance in this government. Do we know our importance in the sector that you are regulating? Are we aware of it? Have we gone through the statutes that established you, the mandate that you've been given, and have you digested it? And can you translate it? Can you tell somebody else who has just arrived into this country in simple terms what your role is, what your economic importance is as a regulator, and what the expectation of the people of Kenya are from you? Because sometimes we enter into institutions and the only thing that we know there is you need an office, you need a salary, and you need some power to throw your weight around. But if you're asked, what is your role? Why was your institution established in the first place? Was there any gap? Have you identified that gap? Have you even followed the thread that connects your institution and its mandate to even the ministry, even to the State Department, to the ministry, and to the entire executive, and to the entire government of the Republic of Kenya? That is the beginning of really putting your foot forward and start doing your job. Or else we shall be there only for big cars, manipulating recruitment to employ people from your constituency of your ward for the next 5 years political ambition. So ask yourself, why was the institution established? Why was the mandate clearly put in the statutes? And what have you done? And how far have you done? And what impact have you created? And if you have not, when have you given yourselves some action program to ensure that you do what is expected of you by the Constitution or by the laws of this republic? Reflect. Have you, again, because majority of you operates following statutes that were perhaps enacted 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Have you translated? Because there is a lot of dynamism in the environment. There are a lot of changes. Have you really understood what it was supposed to do 30 years ago? And you look at the space that you are in now, and thereby check whether it is fit for purpose, your institution and the statutes, or it requires amendments. Are you leading a learning organization? Are you leading an organization that is continuously improving itself, continuously becoming aware, scanning the environment? You know, if it was a political rally, I would think that my opponent has just arrived and cut off the mic. Happily enough, this is purely public service. Have you really realized where you are? What relevant? Is the status still relevant? Does it require some amendments? Does it require some realignment? How do you keep pace with the changes, with the dynamism in the environment? You need to think. The board is the oversight and is a policy maker. The management are supposed to be feeding with the board with information, data for the board to make decision on. Reflect on that. Number 3 is, have you made yourself aware that you don't work alone, you don't operate alone, you have where you report to, you have a State Department, you have a ministry, you have a government, and at the same time, you have the people that you serve. And you have stakeholders around you. Have you made aware? Have you really reflected? So that as you are working and walking around, you know whom you are serving, who you are serving on behalf, and what obligation do you have? Because sometimes you may think that it is okay, there is nothing that can happen to you. You don't mind. you don't care, and then you just become a laughing stock. Because we have an institution which is supposed to protect the citizens, and yet it doesn't. We have an institution that is supposed to catalyze economic growth by aligning everybody in the sector to think and focus on a particular trajectory, and yet you are not. Instead of doing it, you create confusion. Or you leave people to get lost. So you need to ask yourself, are you aware of all the stakeholders around you? And then when you make yourself aware, that is when you realign your institution, you realign your board, and you whip your management to be in sync with the environment. Number 4 is the issue that Dr. Moria said. Are you generating ideas, reducing them into texts and filing them? Do we execute? As a board, when we pass resolutions, do we have a monitoring mechanism? Do we have a feedback mechanism to keep the management on toes and to ensure that the resolutions that have been made benefits your stakeholders all round? Because without execution, we are wasting time. And in fact, those who have not taken up the responsibility as agreed in Mombasa is because they don't have capability to execute. You will get management are in charge of the board, or the board are not have not made themselves aware of what they are expected to do. So the bottom line is execution. What you have resolved, implement, improve if the results are not is to expectation. Clap for yourself if the results are to your expectation. Don't just churn out documents and you say, we are not seeing the cashier here. What is happening? You know, we are supposed to leave. Another reflection that I wanted to leave with you is you may be doing very well in your institution, but is there anybody around you who even knows what you're doing? Or you are just doing, keeping quiet, and nobody knows? So talk about what you are doing. Talk about your mandate. Talk to somebody. Talk to your stakeholders. Talk to the consumers of your services. Talk to the ministry. Talk to everybody. Find time. Just talk. Even if you are in some funeral, in some corner, stand and say, I am Reverend Marori, I am the chairman of NACADA, and NACADA does the following. And if you find yourself in Turkana, you need to have data and statistics of Turkana. To say this town has 200 bars. Out of 200 bars, 5 are selling even some drugs. And we know them. Something. So that people can know that you're working for them. You don't keep quiet. You don't just be in a tie, a suit, a slick car. Now, the job is not for your family. It's for the people of Kenya, and they need to know, they need to understand. Others will even get to know where to run to whenever they have problems in a particular sector. Let us talk about ourselves. Let us talk about our achievement. Let us talk about our plans. Let us talk about our strategies. so that Kenyans can even have space to contribute and even improve what you're doing. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage you, and I told you this, I think this is the third time. Do your job. No one will do any harm if you do your job. Be confident. This government wants results. This government is pushing all of us so that we can have a functioning government. A government that is coherent, a government that produces results. And for it to happen, you don't have to walk into that office fearing that if you do this, you may step into somebody's toes. Do your job as is provided by the statutes and be confident. Even if you have to go home when your head is high, that I did my job, I was fired because I cancelled a license. And I'm telling you, nobody will fire you. We are still around here. So long as you are talking about it, you shout about it, you write reports, you call stakeholders meetings, Kenyans are always behind a performing institution, a performing manager. You are protected, and let me repeat, no single human being in this country will punish you because of doing the right thing, that the people of Kenya is going to benefit. So I repeat, please do your job. Fanyeni kazi yenu. Chairman Mwashetani, fanya kazi yako ya NDSA. Usijali, kama gari ni yangu, simamisha, funga. This is not the first time. I had a lorry somewhere in the lorry. They charged me 400,000. I had to pay, and yet it was carrying nothing. In fact, the driver had stolen the vehicle to transport. And I paid, I didn't complain. So do your job. PSS are here, they are also doing their part. You see how fast this government is running, very fast. Don't be a impediment, and don't let your fears to stifle the function of this government. I hope I'm clear to those people behind. So fanyeni kazi yenu. Wachana na mambo ya kuscheme. You are scheming day and night to remain in that office, and you are doing nothing. You get people lining up in my office, they are scheming. They want to be known. Hey, mimi ni mzuri. Hii kitu nikifanya, iko mtu yote ninaweza. Uko na mtu area hiyo kwa sababu mimi nataka nifunge bus kwa hiyo area. Kama hizo bus ni mbaya, funga zote. Don't go looking for a minister, looking for hopes, looking for a PS, looking for the chairman. If it is wrong, it is. So long as you are not witch-hunting anybody, and so long as you have evidence, that is the only way we can turn around and we can develop this country. We will not do it by scheming day and night to remain in offices. We cannot succeed, and this country will not develop if we are every other minute we are scheming to please somebody. Let us not be people who pleases people. Let us be people who work so that the results of what we are doing is what people recognize and say, yes, we are seeing this board is doing a good job. I think I really want to stop there. Since I'll be with you perhaps tomorrow from afternoon, I'm dashing back to Nairobi for another meeting tomorrow, but I'm coming back tomorrow afternoon to continue with you. But I want to assure all of us that this is the way to go. Have enough time to network, have enough time to share experiences, have enough time to get to know what other people are are doing what they are supposed to be doing, so that also you may be encouraged to do the right thing. So it is now my honor to officially declare the second edition of the annual Regulatory Authorities and Agencies Conference open. Thank you, and God bless you.
Another round of applause for our chief guest. Again, and